Welcome back to Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Jubilee and NASA have made public their policy pledges ahead of the general election. Jubilee would like to continue the transformation, and NASA provides a roadmap to the Kenyan dream. We're unpacking both sets of manifestos with today's guests. Professor Karuti Kanyinga of the University of Nairobi, who's now joined us, and Raphael Obonyo, UN Person of the Year and Youth Advocate. So welcome, Prof, and we'll give you a chance to tell us, because we talked a bit before you joined us, what stood out for you in the manifestos?
Yeah, what stood out for me very clearly is the difference between the two. That NASA is looking at social issues or issues of cohesion, issues of governance, and Jubilee is looking at social development. So they are addressing two different types of Kenyans. Jubilee seems to be addressing the Kenyan middle class under the problem of social development service delivery. And NASA, my view is that they are addressing the old Kenyan of reforms. And this leads to one to be convinced that actually both of them are polarized. They don't seem to be speaking to all Kenyans at the same time. But I really sympathize with all of them, because when we move to different parts of this country, we cannot say that every part of the country has got same problems. So problems are very varied. Maybe as we move on, we are going to see them having regional focused kind of manifestos that will speak to them in a different way. But let me say also another problem that the manifestos are bringing to me. They have launched the manifestos after the party primaries. So, and we know very well that they produced very bad leaders during the party primaries. Some of them cannot be trusted to actually implement these manifestos. Ordinarily, a political party should have launched this manifesto first and then try to give us leaders who will take them to implement these manifestos. There is also the round problem. Both of them have forgotten that we have a devolved system of government, and that the county governments are responsible for some of the functions that they are saying they will do. You cannot really commit the national government to do much on agriculture, because agriculture is a devolved function. Supposing the governors say that we don't want your agenda. Our agenda in my county like Nakuru, in my county like Taveta, is to focus not on the dams that you are doing, but on to focus on cotton as a cash crop. So to hell with your manifesto. And I have got my own manifesto, which is very different. So health, the same problem. So they are behaving as if the Kenya doesn't have two levels of government, and that to me is a major omission.
How is it being unfair to NASA, because they do talk about devolution, and they do talk about collaborating or meeting with the Council of Governors?
They are talking about devolution in a very populist manner. They are talking about giving resources, but look at what they want to do.
45%.
Which is very good, not bad, but look at what they want to do. The programs they want to do in health, the programs they want to do in infrastructure, and the programs they want to do in agriculture.
But you realize, Professor, these divides both have candidates at the county level for governorship, for the gubernatorial positions. So maybe they are talking from the view that the person who is going to be elected governor is our person, and so they have to go with our manifesto. It has to trickle down from the national all the way down.
Well, we are assuming that some of the governors will toe the line, given the way we saw the party primaries. We are also assuming that some of the
history.
We are also, from our past history, we are also assuming that independents will not win some of the governor seats.
As far as the parties are concerned, NASA and Jubilee, the only people who will win are their people.
That's a major mission in their box system. We will be surprised about the kind of independence they are going to get, especially at the level of MCAs. That's the elephant in the room.
But I think, Prof, it's also good for them to sort of articulate their intention, even when it comes to devolution. I think there's nothing wrong with them saying, look, this is what we want to see, even in terms of devolution. So I think for me, to that extent, how they're going to do it still remains
I have no problem, but I would have preferred that these manifestos should have been launched before the party primary, so that we know the kind of leaders we are going to have in the country to implement these manifestos. I'm simply saying that they are system and what they're presenting are not connected.
You've come to content, but before you joined us, we had dwelt quite a bit on style, and the panel and the one guest were rather critical of the style, particularly of NASA. Is that fair?
Let me say this. Jubilee has repeated itself in 2013, mesmerizing and becoming youthful, showing. They put on quite a show. They put on quite a show. And the last one, to be serious, that was quite kienyeji. That's what I say.
So, what do you mean by kienyeji? Because most of us like kienyeji chicken.
Kienyeji food is very nutritious.
And so, what do you say? But by default, anything local is mediocre?
It's not really mediocre, but I would have loved to see some kind of a certain standards raised to a certain level. I don't know how to define it, but there was something that was missing. Let's not forget that actually they were all men, and even Jubilee, it's all men. This is a men affair. Let's first of all begin by noting that they are not giving us women at all. That's the first thing. But even in the manner of presentation, you could see that we are not seeing any significant change on the part. I didn't see any significant innovation, if I can call it that, significant innovation on the part of NASA. Neither did I see any innovation on the part of Jubilee. Jubilee is the repeat of 2013. These others are not innovative, but the most shocking thing is the fact that actually we don't see them saying we have also women in our midst being the paparazzi type of thing that they're doing.
So that speaks to the show, the documents themselves, reading them, processing them as an academic. What did you struggle? Because the panelists and the guests seem to struggle with reading,
I must admit that they're technical documents, but I think as we absorb them, we shall be seeing the details. Those of us who are in the business of reading them and are looking for policy in them. And I must also admit, let's call a spade, that both the documents really they have spent time to put them together. They are good documents from an academic point of view. That makes a good reading for my students. But I'm yet to look at the policy issues out of them. And from a policy point of view, are good. But as I said from the very beginning, you see both of them focusing on two different things. NASA is focused on governance. Jubilee is focused on social development. It's pure and simple. Are those likely to deliver any change in the country? We are back to wherever we were in the 1960s, where people would ask which should come first. Political kingdom or development kingdom. Tanzania, for instance, chose the political kingdom. They are where they are today. Until very recently, Tanzania was extremely very poor. Kenya chose the economic freedom. We are where we are because of that. So whichever route you take has got its own advantages and disadvantages.
Quite interesting, the perspective brought by Professor. There is a region of this country that needs justice more than development. Yet, I'm just looking at, because you say there's one faction that's stuck to social justice, the other on social development. So it's going to be quite an interesting thing to see how they present it across the country. There's a part that actually needs roads, needs water, needs food security. There's a part that needs our position in the government.
Yes.
How much share are you going to give us? So that's what I mean by there's a part of the country that needs justice, there's another part that needs development.
That's what I said from the very beginning, that it's not very easy really to govern this country because every region of the country has got very different type of issues that requires to be addressed in a very different way. We do not have one single national question in this country. We have got different questions, and I think whoever gets a balance on those can make a very good
and before the break, and you talked about this, the focus on inclusion, cohesion, and that's NASA's departure point. What do you make of that? Would you give them a tick for that?
For identifying that one as a major issue of concern, I would give them a tick, because no matter where you go in this country, people really rail at the failure of us to be a nation. Rail at us at the failure not being Kenyan. And to be honest, the question we usually ask is, how many of these leaders can die for Kenya? I doubt whether many of them can die for Kenya, but many of them can die for their own tribal group. But when it comes to identifying with Kenya itself, we are short of those particular kind of leaders in this country. So from beginning to say, let's think about how to reconstruct Kenya itself as a nation that can pull together in the same direction, I think that's not a bad idea. This is what seems to be missing in the last 10, 20 years.
One of the things that the Jubilee government would get credit for, and gets a lot of credit for, is the reforms within education. And one of the things they say about those reforms is, in addition to preparing a skilled workforce, a competitive workforce, it also means that you're engineering Kenyans as opposed to tribal Kenyans. Now, when it comes to cohesion, does Jubilee do enough for you, Raphael?
I don't think they do enough in terms of cohesion. I mean, because you can provide people with their capabilities, but unless you give them the opportunities to be able to use their skills, knowledge and tools, then whatever capabilities you provide does not help a lot. So, for example, we see free primary education. We see them putting a lot of effort in providing.
And now they're talking about free
secondary education. We are talking about doubling the higher education loans and all, which are great. But I think young people, for them to be able to be proud of the education they get, they also need to get opportunities. And you realize it's still very difficult for graduates to get, and Charles was just explaining that, to get opportunities simply because they merit those opportunities. It's about connections, it's about relations, it's about, so unless you help young people see the merit of this education, then you're not doing much in terms of enhancing cohesion.
What about the proposal by Jubilee to build polytechnics in every constituency? Because what was lacking, we have so many universities, but no technicians.
No, we killed the technical college.
Exactly. What do you think? They are reversing that.
But that's not a new promise. They made that promise in 2013. In fact, it is in their manifesto. So unless they're just reiterating.
No, we need to give them credit. Actually, that was the
TVET,
and actually, it's panning out quite well.
But I'm just saying, it's not a new promise. It's not something that would strike me that Jubilee has promised that, because that is something that is already.
But does it not strike you that they've achieved on that? Because they've got the TVETs. They've, I think, almost doubled enrollment, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
They're talking about expanding
and even giving
access.
And that's a great thing in terms of ensuring that we deal with the question of mismatch between skills and what is required in the labor market.
But the issue of cohesion, linking that to cohesion, you still think they're not doing well?
No, I think they're not doing it.
Let me touch on the point that you made here about free primary education. You notice that both the Jubilee and NASA are not telling us where they will get this money from. None of them is telling us this is how we are going to grow the economy, and this is how we are going to get money from tax, so that we can be able to provide free.
Actually, NASA saying they are going to steal the graft holes and use that money to fund free day secondary education.
And the observation before you joined us, though, was that they were very vague when it comes to matters of the economy. There are no numbers, particularly for Jubilee, which uses a lot of numbers. There were no projections,
That's true. I mean, they're also very, very vague on how they're going to fight corruption. Because you cannot say that you're going to put people in jail because we won't believe you. You have not put anyone in jail. You're not going to tell us that we're going to cut waste, and we believe you because we have not seen you cutting waste. No one is becoming innovative in terms of new ideas to grow the economy, new ideas to carbon corruption. And I must admit that if you carbon corruption alone,
but what about that no one in government will do business? No politician will do business with government.
They don't also do business even at present.
Actually, they don't do business at present. But business is done with the government.
But business is done
like we said with the others, this is a rather vague statement.
It's an ambition. It's good for the paper.
This is a fairly tough crowd for both Jubilee and NASA.
Talking of education, Udwak, it begs the question, do we really want free education or do we want quality education? Because how are you going to offer free education, yet we still have a shortage of over 70,000 teachers? Why do you need to have a class full of pupils and there are there is minimal teacher contact, teacher-student contact hours?
Why do you see a dissonance between free and quality?
Because that is what we've experienced since 2003. When we started free primary education. Remember the case of Olympic Primary School, a class with 300 pupils and one teacher. How is that even? Professor is an academia. He will tell you, I mean, that is absolutely hogwash for lack of a better word.
And also just to emphasize, you see, the job creation for both Jubilee and NASA, I think their focus is on informal sector. But if you want to improve service delivery, like things like education, you want to see expansion of the formal sector. We're not talking about what. So where are we going to get more? How are we going to get more teachers on board? You know, so that means.
But they talk about that in other policies. I mean, I think NASA talks about hiring 20,000 teachers a year. I think Jubilee has a similar pledge. They talk
so far Jubilee has done well. They've hired 16,000 teachers, but it's still not good enough for you to be able to make a magnanimous promise like offering free day second education.
I think the focus is more on quantity.
If they are not even able to provide enough money as per the capitation at the moment, how sure are we that they are going to do that moving forward?
So
schools are still waiting for money.
So we're filing that one under empty promise. So
I would file it under empty promise.
Yeah, I think it's an ambition.
But I think let's say this. When we look at the manifesto, there are some things we can believe that actually NASA can be committed to.
Such as?
And there are some things that, they will be committed actually to the issue of national cohesion, because you can see that has been their major plan. You can also believe Jubilee in terms of social development delivery, because we have seen them and their infrastructure. I think that's another route we can believe them in. But we
never mind that the bridge has just collapsed.
Never mind that bridge that has collapsed, of course, and maybe others will collapse, but you cannot believe that they will fight corruption. Right?
Can you believe any of the two can fight corruption?
I doubt very much, but I think when you look at the surveys that are in this country, many people believe that Raila Odinga actually is much more believable in the fight against corruption than Jubilee is. Okay. Many Kenyans also believe that Raila can create better national cohesion than Jubilee would. But many people believe that Uhuru will build more roads and is much more transparent leader than others, right? So it depends on which issues we need to look at and say, whom do you believe among all these leaders?
On different issues.
Kenyans have judged them differently on different issues. Remember, we are a very polarized country, Motegi. We are a country where green is white in Rift Valley and blue is yellow in the other coast. We see things very differently.
So have they gone far enough in their manifestos? Because have they gone far enough in addressing this issue of Kenyan identity? Because that seems to be the overarching theme in the NASA one, but not in the
NASA. I think it's very strong. It's very strong, but it's quite weak on the part of Jubilee.
One of the things that
doesn't NASA go far enough?
I think when we look at their proposals, it's quite far enough.
Yeah. One of the things that NASA is going to do within the first 100 days is to do a referendum, so that we have a mixed kind of, they're calling it some mixed something, and
hybrid.
They're saying, the other people are saying, oh, they want to do the constitutional so that they can give the three boys.
I don't believe them in that. I don't believe that's an empty promise. Referendum will not sell in this country.
Because of the
polarization that we have.
And it's not the way to settle down, 100 days and you want to do such
referendum.
In 100 days you want quick wins, and that cannot be a quick win.
It's not quick win. You are saying you do a referendum so that you know how to distribute power and the benefits. People see it as creating opportunities for yourselves, right? So it won't go far. I think I wouldn't believe.
Quite interesting. And within 100 days, by September they'll be offering free day second education. The price of unga will have come down. The price of sugar will have come down. They will have conducted a referendum. Within 100 days.
That's not very realistic. Who does a better job, though, of courting the youth? Because Kenya, Africa, we are young, and you see everyone going after this young vote. Who does a better job of it, Raphael?
I think both of them are struggling to go after the youth, and they're using almost the similar energies, because Kenya is a very youthful nation, like many African countries. Actually, 80% of our population is below age 35. If you look at the voting bloc, youth are the largest voting bloc. Over 60% are actually
according to the statistics released by IEBC yesterday, it's lower now.
Yes.
The youth are only 9 million. We have 19 million voters.
Yeah, but still, that's a voting bloc that you need. And we've seen, if you read through the NASA manifesto and if you read through the Jubilee manifesto, in fact, we have a very detailed a list of achievement when it comes to youth empowerment, Jubilee. On the other hand, NASA is also trying to mention youth in each and every pillar, each and every category. So I think both of them are going after this.
No, they certainly are. And the question was, who does a better job of quoting the youth?
I think Jubilee has put figures and numbers, so they're doing a better job in terms of telling youth, this is what we've done, this is what we hope to do. They even said 1.3 million jobs. NASA is glossing over this particular issue. Even jobs, you need to look for if you look at the abridged version of their manifesto, you need to look for the word jobs. A young person will not look for devolution, will not look for housing, they just look for jobs. So if you can have that clearly, like they had in the Code Manifesto, where they had jobs as the first issue, I think that will show truly they're going after the youth. So I think NASA has made a deliberate point that they're going for, inclusiveness. They're going for all Kenyans. I think Jubilee is targeting
the youth, the woman, the old, the young.
Yeah, but youth is also not a permanent condition, because we're not permanently a youth. And therefore, really, when you look at them, you sympathize with the kind of proposals they're making. But I agree with Rafa that actually Jubilee seems to be having a better idea about how to capture issues to do with the youth. They have got something that looks a little bit innovative. Jubilee than NASA is. But as I said, youth is not a permanent condition. Very new people are coming into the youth category virtually every other time.
What about food production?
Actually, we have to take a break. So let me just share some of our viewer comments, and then we'll come back to that, because famine was a concern of Kenyans. So the question we asked for our viewers was, which of the two manifestos addresses your concerns and aspirations? And Wilson says, first we want change that guarantees us devolution and good governance. I suspect that's code for NASA. David, Jubilee as a ruling party needs time to prove and deliver. Another, is this the same person? Dennis, NASA's manifesto is the best and achievable. I will go for NASA's. Jubilee promised, this is Ward, promised a lot during 2013. Manifesto, where is Kenya now? NASA did it as much as Jubilee had a good one, but we cannot eat manifestos. And that's where we are. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV. Send us your thoughts on which manifesto, Jubilee or NASA's, has your vote. Our SMS number is 22422, or on Twitter you can use the hashtag Cheche.
Shabiki.com is the latest and most exciting sports betting experience in the country. With 2 10-game weekly jackpots and a guaranteed jackpot winner every month, you would get better odds than this. Mimi ni Shabiki. SMS the word join to 29063 to register and play in this week's 1 million free jackpot.
Join us in the fight against fistula. Vesico-vaginal fistula is a condition caused by prolonged obstructed labor, especially in young girls who are usually in forced early marriage. Fistula is treatable and preventable. To this end, Royal Media Services, the Flying Doctor Society of Africa, Freedom from Fistula, Safaricom Foundation, and Kenyatta National Hospital have organized a free fistula camp on 16th to 30th June 2017 at the Kenyatta National Hospital. Screening will start on the 15th of June 2017 at Clinic 66. To donate towards this initiative, you can send your donation to M-Pesa paybill number 524300, account name Fistula. There is hope for the Kenyan mother. Together, let us restore dignity to women suffering from fistula.
Fiber is the latest, fast, reliable, high-speed internet connection for homes and business enterprises.
This is Fiber, with no buffering and no downtime. Only Fiber can do that.
When getting price quotes on life insurance, be sure that you're comparing similar products. Get proper insurance cover today.
The chances of winning Shabiki.com are very high, because you have two options. One is auto bet, and one you bet according to what you think, the teams you think would win. So I would want to urge every Mombasa County resident to try this, because I'm sure anybody who is trying will win. There is no loser in Shabiki.com. Everybody is a winner in Shabiki.com. Shabiki.com.
This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we are discussing manifestos, because these are policy pledges, sometimes empty promises according to cynics. But we are at that time of our political calendar when promises abound. There are lots of them in the manifestos of the two main political camps, Jubilee and NASA. Why should we believe either of them? Well, our guest this morning, our political scientist, Professor Karuti Kanyinga of the University of Nairobi, and Raphael Obonyo, a UN Person of the Year and Youth Advocate. And before the break, we were talking about young people and, who does a better job. But the other concern that Kenyans have is hunger, famine, because this has not been a very good year for us. We've had drought, and now we cannot find unga. Right? And so I think you were asking a question, Otegi, about food production.
Yeah, I wanted to know from the two, who is better, who is doing what, which manifesto is better when it comes to food.
Yeah, both of them are strong, but my view, again, let me repeat. Food production, we must look at it as a responsibility of the county government, because agriculture is fully devolved. So what we need them to see them doing is to say exactly what is it that they will be doing with the county government to increase food production. Jubilee has said that it's going to reduce the cost of inputs. That's something that we need to be happy about. NASA is talking about dams, it's talking about increased agricultural production by making interventionist approaches. That's also something good. But they can't do that. That's the responsibility of the county government. So then if you reduce the cost of inputs, tell us how the county governments will be promoting agricultural production. And this is why I said both of them seem to think that they are a national government that will be delivering development on their own without thinking about the role the county governments are going to play. You can imagine where we have got, let's say, NASA counties, those that will be having NASA governors. Do you think that the Jubilee government can tell them this is the kind of policy we want you to implement, and they take it with ease? Maybe even on the other way around, if you have got a NASA government and the Jubilee counties, do you think the the governors from the Jubilee counties will just take policies from the national government of NASA and implement them without questioning heavily about the political implications of that?
But
I think that's where they missed the point.
When they brought medical equipment, the national government brought medical equipment, the counties resisted.
Yes.
But finally they took.
How long did it take?
They were coerced into taking it. How long did it take? So the same way, there's money in the same way. If they build dams, If they build dams,
dams are a very good example because no one will refuse a dam built by the national government.
Yeah.
But even if we take the example of the medical equipment, it was not a very easy process to have the county governments accept them.
Or look at something that has happened, the purchase of fertilizers. There was a general complaint that a bit of it was substandard or it was not the right one. It was procured by the national government. And so...
Yeah, the problem with agriculture again is that sometimes you procure fertilizer that is the same for all counties, including counties that will not require that type of fertilizer. The same with medical equipment. Tana River, for instance, may not require cancer equipment that very immediate period. Maybe what they would require is X-ray machines or something else. Maybe because they don't have a place actually to locate them. So you need actually to be driven by needs of every county. So I'm simply saying that in terms of agriculture, both NASA and the Jubilee have made a mistake. It's not their responsibility. They should be telling us how they're going to work with the county government to increase food production. In my view, they have got it wrong.
Isn't it possible that those dams and that procurement of by national government is not motivated by development, but by other issues like corruption?
Just mention it properly. I mean, Motegi seems to be saying that infrastructure programs are places for rent. Rent seeking. That's true, and that's why both of them are very vague on how to address issues of rent seeking from both.
Here's what one of our viewers says: instead of manifestos, they should provide the electorate with enough food. There is no maize flour in Mombasa for over 2 months now. Where found, it is 200 shillings. How will dying voters vote? And that's Robert in Bamburi. Do you think that the manifestos, and Professor, you talked about this, that these were policy documents for the middle class? Do you think that these manifestos are sensitive to the needs of Kenyans who fall outside the formal structures of the economy?
Yeah, but let me correct the viewer's view that perception that people don't eat manifestos. As Raphael said,
that was the previous one.
As Raphael said, actually people eat manifestos because it's from the manifestos that you see government programs, and those programs can produce results that people eat.
Professor, that's what you and I and the other middle class Kenyans would think.
And that's why
the Kenyan who is hungry, like that gentleman from Mombasa, they don't want to eat tomorrow because they are already hungry today. They want food today. Would manifestos address prevailing situations?
Well, you don't expect manifestos to produce results almost immediately.
That's one thing they need to understand.
Yeah, so even Kenyans need to know that actually a policy government document is an intention that is going to be implemented over a long period of time and produce good results.
You said something important during the break, that even though people fault the Jubilee government for its heavy focus on infrastructure, the benefits will be manifested in Kenya, not just immediately. Now, tell us a bit more about that.
No, my point is that if you invest heavily in mega projects, those mega projects will not produce growth immediately. SGR is not going to produce growth results almost immediately. But 5 years down the line, that's when you are likely to see major benefits from that kind of investment. I would like to give an example with Kibaki 1. Kibaki 1 investments that we had showed dividends during the coalition government, and even today, actually, we see results of that heavy investment in infrastructure, heavy investments in good governance. The results began to show after 6 years of this regime, not immediately.
Well, I think that is important. I think Jubilee, and that is again a point of departure between NASA and Jubilee. Jubilee is focused on investing in mega projects.
Yeah.
You know, that is their focus. I think NASA wants to go for small-holding farmers, you know, stuff like that, entrepreneurs.
Even the visuals, though, when you look at the manifesto, because Jubilee has this image of a tree, and then under the roots you see infrastructure and various other things.
And then job opportunities and stuff.
So I think that's a point of departure. How they can reap from that, I think it depends so much on many things. One, I think the kind of investment they put in it. I think if we are putting too much money on that and not addressing the immediate needs of Kenyans, chances are Kenyans are going to rebel against that, against such good projects. So I think they need to be careful. And I think also the other thing is for us to reap the benefit, it will depend so much on how we manage some of those projects, some of those infrastructures. So will we have a government that is going to, someone was saying SGR will go the Kenya Railways way, you know, within a short time. No one can manage it and all that. So if that is then the perception, or if we go that route where we have good projects but poor management, then again it will be very difficult for them to reap the benefits. But like Prof says, I think it takes quite a bit of time.
Immediate needs.
I want to say that when I look at some of the survey data, studies that have been done in recent times, the number 3 priority list of most Kenyans from different types of the regions in this country is employment. Employment, that's what you hear everybody talking about. Security comes, cost of living is actually number 1. The cost of living.
Well, actually, recently it was election-related violence for 2017. Then it came to cost of living, and then employment, and then I think we come back to security. Yeah, security has replaced the corruption now. Not that corruption is at the tail end, because I think everybody has become so corrupt that it's a new normal. You don't actually know when corruption is being practiced and when it's not being practiced. Maybe what you can differentiate from corruption is theft, when someone is stealing something and putting it in the pocket, but when not someone is abusing his office or her office. An immediate need, remember, was healthcare, because nurses are on strike. And this is what Sharon says. Health is crumbling. Nurses have been out for close to a month, and to be presidents are out giving out manifestos. None seems to care about the miserable people who cannot afford care from private hospitals. And we heard these sorts of sentiments when the doctors were on strike as well. We saw the devastating consequences then. We hear about the devastating consequences now. I think NASA talks about ensuring good industrial relations with key sector workers, teachers, doctors, and healthcare, but there's nothing about looking after, nothing concrete about looking after these important workers.
Actually, sorry, Professor. Actually, Jubilee talked about providing health care for everybody equally, but they, like you rightfully put it, they didn't mention who is going to provide that.
The providers of the health care, because
I have an NHIF card, I'll be admitted in hospital, but who is going to take care of me?
Because what they have done, one of their successes for Jubilee is increasing access to this NHIF healthcare, and this time they say they're going to be more ambitious. They want to ensure universal healthcare coverage, but you know, we come back, who is providing this coverage? Are Kenyan workers, or are we going to import them in the manner that we heard during the doctor strike?
Let me go back to my pet project of the field of the national government to discuss healthcare with the county governments. Healthcare is a devolved function. There are some functions that are still with the national government, and they have never discussed with the county governments on how to relinquish some of those particular functions. That's where the problem is. You usually say that you want the county governments to deal with the nurses, but maybe you have not disbursed all the funds at the same time. You want the doctors to be dealt with by the county governments, you are still holding on their payroll. I mean, there are some nitty-gritty things that need to be sorted out for us to have a proper functioning health care. The county governments and the National Hospital Insurance Fund may need to have a serious discussion on how to proceed to move forward. And both of them in their manifestos, Jubilee and NASA, really, we can say again, they have missed the point there. We don't see them actually placing a priority on what the county governments need to be doing. And I think that's a major weakness that you see among them.
Are we being unfair to expect that politicians, whatever you want to call them, political parties, should know the nitty-gritty, the how of how they intend to arrive at the promised land? Because they are articulating a vision for us. We will take you to the promised land. But they're not able to say whether we're going to go through the wilderness, through the Red Sea, or whatever. Must we have those details?
We must have the details, because you must tell us the scenarios. How do you see the future as a leader? You cannot identify to lead people without knowing that actually there are rocks ahead, there are animals ahead. You must know the road that you are taking. And these are the pitfalls that you must identify. NASA, for instance, will tell us we are moving to Kenya using a governance route. We want to go to the promised land through a social justice route. And in this route we are going to have it difficult. We know we have got corrupt individuals among ourselves. We shall drop them as we move on, and the Jubilee should be telling us, I'm taking you to the promised land. We have got mega projects and social development infrastructure. Unfortunately, we eat them as we move. You know,
it's going to be costly, but at the end
and we shall reach there. We need them to explain to us the challenges that they see on the routes that they are taking.
True, and I think it's not enough to talk about the destination without telling us about the roads that lead to the destination, because we are making a serious assumption that that we'll just arrive at the destination.
Unless, of course, if you don't have a place for the voter.
Yeah, and I think the manifestos should also be developed in such a way that the voter also understands the road. You know, it's not only the destination. Don't just make the voter see the destination, because otherwise they'll blame you for all the problems. Like Prof is saying, let people know at each step what is going to happen. And I think politicians tend to behave like witch doctors. You know, when you visit witch doctors, for people who visit witch doctors, you know, they tell you just relax, I'm going to fix the problem. They don't tell you what the problem is, they don't tell you how they're going to do it, but they'll tell you we'll fix it. So I think politicians are behaving like that. They're saying, oh, you're hungry.
Speaking from experience?
No, not from experience, from stories that I've had.
No, but a good witch doctor will have two things to tell you. That if it doesn't rain today, there will be sunshine. And sure enough, I mean, one of them will happen. So with a 100% degree, that both of them, one of them will happen.
I don't know about which doctor, but I want to believe it's very hard therefore. It's very hard therefore to get a good witch doctor.
No, they are very good. At least he's telling you what will happen. If it doesn't rain, the opposite will happen.
So I'll ask you the same question. Is this from experience?
Don't worry.
One of the things that probably may scare people with the NASA manifesto is that historical injustices and those things that are going to create problems because of history. Do you think they're serious, and do you think it can be achieved?
I don't believe them in that. No one will ever touch historical injustice in this country. It's a difficult topic. You wouldn't know where to begin. Would you just get the whole of Kajiado and Masai land and give it back to Masai?
Including Nairobi?
Including Nairobi. I mean, there are some injustices that you can deal with, like injustices of stealing other people's land during the land adjudication process, historical injustices of neglecting northern Kenya and neglecting coast in terms of development. That's a historical marginalization that you can deal with by pumping resources from the national government to develop them in line with what the Constitution looks at in terms of equalization fund. But when it comes to land stolen during the colonial period, land lost during the emergency period, 1954 period, although we know the cut-off date could be the post-independence period, some of them are very difficult. You will open a can of worms that it's difficult to deal with.
I am pretty certain if NASA would have given a roadmap on how to implement the TJRC report, Professor would have thought differently. Because take the case of Rwanda. Somebody stands out and says the Gashasha code. Somebody stands up and said, I am sorry, I'm the one who killed your father. It doesn't mean you stand up and hack them so that you are even. It simply means you accept the apology and you move on and you bring it to So like the two gentlemen said earlier, if NASA would give a roadmap on how to implement the TJRC report, then maybe Professor here and the other naysayers out there would have accepted that promise.
That only happens in a post-conflict situation and almost immediately for people to go that route. We are not in 2007. If it was 1 month after the 2007, what we are saying is what we would have done. But at present, with the normalcy that we have, it's difficult.
It would be taking people back.
It will be taking people back.
And I think this is one of the Jubilee's undoing also, because they had the TJRC report, the President received it, and I think even the majority leader in the National Assembly promised to table it and make sure it is implemented. That never happened. So it's something that Jubilee also had in mind, but they never did it. But I think NASA is picking it up. But like Prof is saying, how to implement it
is the issue. The roadmap.
The roadmap, they don't have a roadmap. I think it's a good document and item for campaigns, but when it comes to actualization, I think NASA will have.
Okay, so very quickly, this is what our viewers are saying with regard to whether they will vote. You know, which document, which manifesto speaks to them. I will not vote based on manifestos, on how much someone has whined, but on what they have done, because both sides have been part of government and have had a chance to impress. That's Peter. in Nairobi. The Jubilee Manifesto was organized and transparent, and they told us how and the means to deliver their manifesto, rather than that of NASA, which just promises heaven, and yet they're not telling us how they'll achieve it. Allow me to quote Musali as an example, who told one of the NASA principals, who told us that they will build urban centers in all 47 counties, as if the land around the urban centers are for government. Seriously? Instead of telling us how to curb food insecurity. NASA manifesto is the best, says another viewer. A governing party operates in an integrated approach. You cannot talk about national development as a party without reference to counties. This is, I think, backing you up. The law provides policy direction on this. Governors are party members. Awando in Migori. The Jubilee Manifesto has my vote because it's realistic. I support the NASA Manifesto because actually we are tired. Jubilee is better. I will vote for Jubilee. The manifesto is clearer and puts numbers, whereas NASA glosses over issues. Manifestos are just a document, but I would love to see how NASA would implement their promises now that he's only going for one term. Cheche, for Jubilee, it's a second manifesto. My question is, the previous one, what's this that they've done to convince us to vote them back? And one person says, Jubilee has delivered on 60% of their 2013 manifesto. So it's quite mixed. But it seems that Jubilee's manifesto is resonating a bit more with our viewers.
Yeah, that seems to be the case, but let me say one word. Whoever wins this election will take the other's manifesto and start it keenly and say, let me incorporate this particular element.
They've even done that, yes, actually. In this manifesto, if you look at some of the items in the Jubilee Manifesto, you'll find them in the Code 2013 Manifesto. If you look at the NASA's Manifesto, you'll find some of the Jubilee's Coalition 2013. They've put, actually even just lifting them and placing them in the manifesto.
And you know, the reason is simply because we are not driven by any particular ideology.
I was just about to come to the ideological question. No ideology, capitalism, socialism, social, what does NASA like to talk about? Social justice?
Social justice.
No, social justice, but I think there is a limit to social justice without, there is a limit to social justice without development, you know. And that's the route they are taking, but you'll see them borrowing a lot from Jubilee, and Jubilee you'll see them borrowing a lot from NASA as well.
More or less, and you had them blame each other that, oh, you took my issue, oh, we are the one.
You took mine, I took yours, you know.
Yet no particular political
party. Is that a comment, a reflection of our politics, that it is not issue-based, it is not ideologically anchored, or is it that just that we're being pragmatic? This is what we need, this is how we'll get you, this is how we'll
actually, our politics is issue-based. I've changed my thinking in the last 5 years, or in the last 10 years. Because when we say our politics is driven by ethnicity, that particular ethnic group that you see in this country complains about certain things and votes the way it votes because of certain complaints. That's an issue. Before we went for before we got a new constitution, the coast would always support arguments about Manjimbo. Rift Valley about Manjimbo. Nyanza would support Manjimbo. Why? It's because they felt centralized government was against development in those particular regions. So they would vote on basis of how they felt, and a Manjimbo government or a decentralized government would help them develop like any other region of the country. So I think we are issue-based, except that our ethnic groups are the ones that articulate those issues. And since our ethnic groups are regional-based, every region has got something to complain about, and what it complains about is what we are calling issues. And therefore, because everybody complains about something that is different from everybody else, we tend to think we are not issue-based. We are very much issue-based.
I think electorate are issue-based, politicians are not issue-based.
Yes.
How would you make that distinction?
Yeah, because I think electorate and voters, voters have certain issues that they are concerned about. But politicians use ethnic mobilization just to get the votes, not necessarily to address
those issues of that particular ethnic group.
But so these manifestos, therefore, are not issue-based, or how would you then, if you were to apply the logic that you're giving us now, that politicians are use ethnic mobilization? Where's the ethnic mobilization in the manifestos?
Just like Prof said, ethnic groups have certain issues. Politicians identify those issues, put them nicely dress them up, and they continue using ethnic mobilization and to disguise themselves that they're going to deal with these issues that are affecting electorate. But actually, they're not interested in dealing with those.
Do you see any possibility of any violence during these elections or 2022?
This is a high voltage elections. I think there is high. I mean, both sides. Once we win these elections, we are back to 2007, and I think how we manage the situation, I think it's in the hands of the referee. IBC. I think
and the political leaders.
Of course, the political leaders, but political leaders, you cannot expect them to do anything. I think for them,
the ones who
they are
going violence.
Yes, they want power.
And that's why I say
but let me also agree with Raphael, but say it's high voltage election at 3 levels. At the county level, we must expect violence in certain counties, as we saw during the party primaries.
They've already been flagged.
As we have
19 counties.
Actually, there are more than that. It's 47 counties.
You think the entire country?
Yes, that every county is a hotspot depending on how elections will be conducted, because even the position of MCA is now much more important than that of an MP. And there will be violence that is localized.
Okay.
At the national level, it will depend on the transparency of the IEBC itself.
Okay, and so we'll have to end it there because our time is up. That's all we have time for this morning. Our thanks to Professor Koreti Kanyinga of the University of Nairobi and Raphael Obonyo, a UN Person of the Year, Youth Advocate, Pan-African Youth Leader, our thanks also to our panelists, Otegi Njau and Charles Odhiambo. My name is Udo Kamimo. Thank you for watching and engaging with us on Cheche. We'll see you next week.